While I love being a part of the Batman fandom, the fan base is so stressful because it is so difficult to appease the bulk of the fandom with most media, it seems. But sometimes there are legit reasons why Batman fans may not find certain material worth their time. However, despite what many fans may think of a comic or another storyline, and it's not their most favorite, it all is still part of Batman's 80+ year history, so I'm going to recommend it because no one else will. Welcome back, Gothamites. If you're new here, hi. I'm London, aka History of the Batman. Now, I know this isn't my Poison Ivy Gotham City Sirens 5-minute Bat history, which I will put out later this week, so be on the lookout for that. But I was inspired to do this video, and since I have been stuck in this house for weeks now, anytime I get some type of burst of creative inspiration, I have to move on it. While we all love this DC Comics character, not all Batman media is created equal, unfortunately. Which means that there are many comics, TV shows, film, video games, storylines that a majority of Batman fans aren't the fondest of for whatever their reasoning. It could be the plot itself is just messy. It could be how certain characters are interpreted, or it could just be the scene in general just isn't what you may think Batman represents. And even though there are some bad eggs within Batman media over the last 8 decades, I mean, it's 8 decades, so of course not every single thing is going to be an amazing piece of literature and art. You should check out as much Batman media as possible, even if you've heard through the Bat grapevine that it may not be the best story for you. A, what are you doing right now? You're just at home, right? So why don't you go check out some more media if you haven't seen it? And B, these stories that many people think aren't good Batman stories may become one of your favorites in your collection. You don't know. That is what I'm going to do for this video. I am going to list some Batman comics. I'm not going to go outside of other media yet, even though I am wearing a Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice shirt, so interpret that as you will. That many fans within the Batman fandom are not fans of and wish that it didn't exist, that they didn't read it, whatever. But I think that you should check it out because, as I have been saying, it's all part of Batman's history, so you can't just ignore it. So before we get into some bad Bat stories, why don't you subscribe to this channel and become part of this wonderful Gothamite community. Disclaimer, I personally am not saying that I hate these stories, because like the first one we're going to start with is one of my favorite Batman stories of all time. It is just what the majority of people in the Batman world say. So it's really based off of popular opinion. And especially if I'm telling you to go read these stories, I'll even make an Amazon list in my store and all that for you to check it out and add it to your collection. I don't think that like all of these are trash. I've just tried to clear all my bases before I start this commentary. Our first is All-Star Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder, which was a 10-issue limited series that was written by Frank Miller. Now, of course, Frank Miller, you know, is the man that has written small books such as Batman, The Dark Knight Returns, and Batman Year One. So it's not like Frank Miller has not had some good ones in his pocket. And yes, is this storyline, which was under the All-Star imprint that DC Comics had for like 2 days, it is part of the Dark Knight universe. So it is within the world of this DKR and other books. But many people aren't fans. Another retelling of Dick Grayson's origin story. This book felt anything but that. Of course it does show Dick Grayson losing his parents and then Bruce taking him in and training him to become his new sidekick Robin, and all of that is in this plot. However, is that what All-Star Batman is remembered for? No! This story belongs in this video and on many people's I don't like this Batman story list because of how Batman is extremely portrayed. His mannerisms are at times sadistic and crass, and he's just a very, very violent vigilante who does not care what he does. I mean, Batman in this term is all around kind of an asshole. And especially the way that he treats a young Dick Grayson shortly after his parents were killed. There are many points within the story that show how Batman is not the caped crusader that many grew up with, that people have read in other comics or seen in other media, and they did not like that. Honestly, I think it is all a parody on the Batman universe in general, and that is why it's so extreme. It's basically satire, and I think that's one of the reasons why I still love it. I love the storyline, I love the art, I love the madness, because I think it is just a satirical take on this character's 8 decades. But of course, I am like one of like maybe 3 people that think that, and others just do not like the story. It's still a fun take on this part of the Dark Knight's very long history. So, do I recommend reading All-Star Batman? Yes. Yes, I do. Will you like it? I don't know. And let me know in the comments below if you did like it. And if you didn't like it, tell me why. Okay, our second story is the reason why this video exists. So a few days ago on Twitter, because I am up all night, my sleep schedule is literal trash. This hashtag was trending at like 3 in the morning at like #1 or something real dumb like that. And so when I saw it and tying it to Batman, because that's my job, of course I thought of the 2016 animated film Batman the Killing Joke and Bruce and Barbara's sexual relationship that many people were like, what is this? I mean, even myself, when I found out, oh, this is where we're going with this intro that they had to like include because just doing the Killing Joke by itself was too short, so the animators and the storytellers had to make the story longer so they can make a movie, and that's what they chose. It caught me off guard, not gonna lie. But I didn't hate it. You know, that didn't make me hate the movie, because The Killing Joke is one of my favorite stories of all time, so it would be really hard for me to hate it. But going back to the tweet. So I tweeted the clip of Bruce basically ghosting Babs and trying to act like nothing happened after they slept with each other and all that. He was kind of being not the greatest in that situation. But this Gothamite that follows, which if you're not following social media, go do it. Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. It's a fun time. He was like, wasn't there a storyline that made it canon in Batman the Animated Series? And I was like, oh, yes, there is. And that's what this story is. If you aren't familiar, as you may or may not know, Barbara Gordon, aka Batgirl, ever since her 1967 debut, her and Batman have been platonic co-workers, friends, and Babs has seen Bruce as a mentor of kinds in the past. So it's never even been them together in that way, which is of course the reason why many fans were shocked when Bruce Timm decided, I'm gonna do this in this film. But anyway, in 2014, just 2 years before the animated version of The Killing Joke was released, Kyle Higgins and Alex Siegel in Batman Beyond 2.0 issue 28 explored what would happen if Bruce and Babs actually had a deeper relationship other than being co-workers. Dick Grayson returns from Bloodhaven to Gotham City and reignites his relationship with Barbara Gordon. And they're all happy and they're in love and everything is fine. Everything is perfect until Babs takes a pregnancy test. She's 7 weeks pregnant. So, okay, that's fine. But how long has Dick Grayson been back in town? For 3 weeks. So since that math just doesn't make sense, Babs goes to the Batcave and says, hey Bruce, I'm pregnant. And he's like, oh, well, I guess I'll have to congratulate Dick, huh? And she's like, that's not the Dick you need to congratulate. And he's like, oh no. Because while Grayson was in Bloodhaven, Bruce and Babs had an affair. They were lovers, and Bruce, you should know about protection and how important it is. When Bruce finds out, he thinks that the best idea is for him to go talk to Dick about the fact that he got Babs pregnant. And I don't know why he thought that that was the best thing to do. Because of this, Dick Grayson is mad as hell, which he should be. And while he is fighting with Bruce, Babs is walking home and she has to fight these two thugs in this dark alley who hurt her to the point where she crumbles up on the ground in the fetal position, holding her stomach, and you find out that she lost the baby. So this story has lots of things. It has affairs, deception, miscarriages, just a lot going on in this story, a lot to unpack. Of course, because Bruce and Babs were together, fans were like, what's this? Why is that now canon within the Batman Beyond universe? Like, why? However, it's still a good story. It's still a good plot. The art is still dope. So, of course, I recommend you checking it out, regardless if you haven't. The takeaway from that story is Batman has all these gadgets, has all these weapons, has everything to protect himself from fighting these criminals, but he doesn't use a condom, and I don't understand why not. Oh, before the next story, I'm in my office and Ashley went through something that was really bad, like most of my comic book collection being stolen. So I really don't have much of all the comics and all the things that I had in terms of books. But you know, it was still a trade in the very small little thing of trades I have now. All-Star Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder, because the universe knows, even though this story is crazy as hell, I love it. And they were like, we should at least give you that. You know, we took most of your signed comics and things that were memorable to you, that created just more and more of your love for this mythology, but this is the one that the universe decided to let me still have. So don't know what that means, but let's keep going. Now this next arc is a 2000 arc that was headed by Larry Hama, and it introduces the character. I don't know why this is like a thing for me. Grace Ballin in the pages of Batman 579 to 581. It's just a 3-issue arc. But we follow Grace Ballin, who is a PhD marine biologist student at Gotham Gate College. And while she's working at the Gotham City Aquarium, she actually gets into a big accident and becomes paralyzed from the waist down. Now, because of this, and because she is a scientist, she starts to look into ways that she can regain her legs. And part of that is diving into orca genetics. Now, because all of this is just shady, weird science, she takes all of the materials that she needs and she injects the orca genetics into her, the extracts, and she thinks, oh, that's going to help her regain mobility. However, instead she becomes a hybrid monster of sorts. But because she is a hybrid beast now, she can switch back from being orca and being human. However, when she is orca, she is able to walk, and then when she is Grace, she is still paralyzed. So what do you do when you become some hybrid monster? You become a villain in Gotham City because Gotham is trash, and all of this madness, of course, is within Gotham. No other city. Like, it's Orca decides, I'm gonna steal this really nice diamond so I can get some cash, so I can do more with my studies and my crazy weird science and all that. And because of this, Batman has to hunt her down because that is his job. And in the end, Batman convinces her, what you're doing is insane and you need to stop. And she tries to go back to her normal self. But the fact that Batman in his rogues gallery in 2000, this villain is created, and this is an actual storyline of Batman fighting a killer whale villain in Gotham. It's just madness, and I think that's why the character of Grace slash the Orca herself was not received well when this came out, because it literally feels like I am in 1955 and I'm reading this story. It just doesn't fit into the modern era of going into the year 2000. It just wasn't. It just did not flow. And even now, reading it back, it's still, it's crazy. Do I recommend it? Of course I do. Because if you didn't know that Batman had a killer whale slash human villain in his rogues gallery, and now you do, you need to read it. Just saying. Our fourth storyline arc, whatever you want to call it, is Grayson. Yes, I'm putting in Grayson. So as you may or may not know, DC Comics received a soft reboot in 2011 that was called The New 52. This was an important time for the character Dick Grayson. While this was being rebooted and we were entering the New 52, he was still Batman because Bruce Wayne died in like 2009, 2010. Dick Grayson took up the mantle as Batman with Damian Wayne as the new Robin. He wasn't Nightwing for a few years, but the New 52 allowed him to become Nightwing again. So everyone was like, yay! But then, couldn't have Dick Grayson just being normal and happy now, can we? Because in the debut issue of 2013's Forever Evil, the crime syndicate ousted Dick Grayson and revealed to the entire world that he was Nightwing. F you, Dick Grayson. Because of this leads to Dick Grayson faking his own death and becoming a double secret agent by the name of now Agent 37. And once he infiltrates the organization Spiral, he actually becomes an agent, part of Spiral. And that is followed in Tim Seeley's limited arc, Grayson. This arc lasts from 2014 to 2016. We follow Grayson finding new Rogue. But is he Nightwing? No. Is he some random secret agent? Yes. Is that very weird to see Dick Grayson as a spy and not Nightwing after all these years? Yes. And were fans a fan? Eventually, they were able to erase any and all of anything showing that Dick Grayson was Nightwing, and so he was able to actually return to the mantle. It's a great limited series to check out. I do recommend it. But if you are used to seeing Grayson as the Nightwing character, which most are, you may not be a fan of it. And a lot of people weren't. A lot of people complained like, why are you taking Nightwing away from Dick Grayson when he just got back to it? I would say many fans would think that this is not the greatest part of Dick Grayson's now 80-year history. Let's keep it going. We're going to talk about Batman the Widening Gyre, and I know I have discussed this book many times in different videos, but I know for a fact that people are still mad about the ending of this series. In 2010, Kevin Smith and Walt Flanagan had a series called Batman the Widening Gyre, which is a follow-up to both of these creators do a Batman cacophony. In this story, while Batman is getting help from a new bat friend that he is slowly trusting for whatever reason, this story is of course most memorable because Bruce Wayne and Silver St. Cloud, one of my faves, reconnect and reconcile, and they become lovers again, and they're together, and Bruce is actually happy. So much so that in the sixth and last issue of this series, which it wasn't supposed to be just 6 issues, which was a big part of this whole problem with the Widening Gyre, Bruce asks Silver St. Cloud to marry him, and she's like, oh hell yeah. And it seems like everything's nice and happy, and he tells her about being Batman and like puts it all out there, and she is accepting and loving, and they're happy, and it's all good until the last page when Batman's new friend that was helping him out protecting Gotham City turns out to be an old rogue called Onomatopoeia, who comes and slits Silver St. Cloud's throat, killing her. And that's how not only this issue ended, but the whole arc. That was it. They didn't finish it. It was supposed to actually be like 12 issues long. It was 6. And it had to do with scheduling and all of these things. But people were pissed. And people not only saw how Silver St. Cloud got taken out, but the book didn't finish. People were really, really upset. I mean, people still ask for this to continue, for this to be wrapped up in some way, even if it's in like a one shot. They want Kevin Smith and Walt Flanagan to come back and just finish it, but I don't think that's going to happen. This was not a good thing for Silver St. Cloud, and I was like, that's really sad. Because yes, do I think he'll be happy? No. But did I want her to be killed at all, and especially in this way? No, of course not. So that was the biggest problem. But do I recommend you read The Winding Iron, especially if you are a fan of Kevin Smith? Of course I do. Go forth and get mad. Oh my God, this next one. Batman Odyssey. And it was written and illustrated by Neal Adams. Now, do not get me wrong. Neal Adams is a legend. He is a god of sorts. I mean, I even still have this, which is great, which is a Batman illustrated by Neal Adams, and this volume has Neal Adams illustrated stories from 1969 to 1971 because I love his art from that era. I like how I had a page bookmark that I wanted to show, and it's the Justice League animated, and it's signed by Susan Eisenberg. So that's, I don't know why that was a bookmark, but anyway, his art is just that good. I mean, these are both some of my favorite Batman stories. This one is an homage to the Beatles, which is a really fun story. And this one is the first time that Man-Bat is in any comic. We all know that Neal Adams is great. We do. His art, emphasis on art, is outstanding. The writing, however, maybe, just maybe, isn't as stellar as his art. Maybe. Why would I ever dare say that? It's because of Batman Odyssey. As I was researching this video and kind of looking at other people discussing their issues with these stories that I wanted to highlight, I did come across this article, which is a very good article, actually. I will link it below. It's from Comics Alliance. I actually really like it. And they're discussing in depth Batman Odyssey. But as they're talking about it, are saying how all of this is just madness. Rereading it myself, because I hadn't read it in years for particular reasons, which came out in 2010, lasted until 2011. The word that I would use to describe Batman Odyssey is ludicrous. Just straight ludicrous. But what's funny is while I'm like, how would I explain the plot? In that article that I mentioned, someone asked Neal Adams to give an overview of the plot, and Neal Adams' actual real life answer was, I cannot give you an overview of the plot. He literally can't give you an overview of the plot because it's that messy. Is the art in this 7-issue arc that follows Batman going into another world, another matrix, following the classic villains and allies in his mythology and discovering not only more about them but also himself? Is the art stellar? Of course it is, because it's Neal Adams. The real question is the execution of the plot. Is it as stellar as his artwork? Not even a little. However, it is something from a legend like Neal Adams, and if you have never read Batman Odyssey before, go forth. If you are a fan that likes Batman to be out of his element, not in Gotham City, and having him be Batman in other places, then I honestly recommend you reading Batman Odyssey. If the author of a book can't give you an overview of their own plot that they wrote, maybe, just maybe, it's a little convoluted. Our next story is the 2005 arc Batman War Crimes, which was written by Bill Willingham and Anderson Gabrich in the pages of Detective Comics and Batman. Now, the biggest thing in this arc, which is shortly after Batman War Games, which saw the untimely death of Stephanie Brown, aka Spoiler, by the hands of Black Mask when she unknowingly ignites a turf war, a very violent and bloody turf war in Gotham, all while she's trying to prove to Batman that she would still be a great Robin sidekick after he just fired her for not being a great Robin sidekick. And it actually leads to her death. Now, of course, Batman hates the fact that even though, yeah, she wasn't the greatest Robin, she was still ultimately part of the Batman family, and her death really hurt him. However, literally a year later, you find out that all of this was just a ruse by Leslie Tompkins. Not some villain, not some horrible person, but Leslie Tompkins, who has been a almost motherly figure of sorts to Bruce and helps him cope with the guilt and the death of his parents. She has always been that person to be there for Bruce. And they have turned her into what I think is a monster, because it is Leslie Tompkins' fault that Stephanie Brown actually died. Before Batman actually got to the hospital and watched Stephanie die, she was actually living and was able to survive her injuries, even though they were really, really critical. But Leslie Tompkins, when she saw that Stephanie Brown was put in her clinic and was like, oh no, she wanted to teach Batman a lesson about literally child endangerment. She wanted to teach Batman not to put these kids in the front lines of things such as turf wars and these horrible villains in Gotham. And she let Stephanie die. She is the reason why Stephanie is dead, just to prove a point to Batman that he shouldn't have kids. It is Bat family crusade. I hate that so much. This is one that I personally was really sad about, because I never thought that Leslie Tompkins would do anything like that, and I honestly think it is still out of her character to this day, and it's rather unfortunate. The story itself is great. Black Mask is of course still a part of this, because after War Games he's the one that became the big head of the underground in Gotham. It's a good story and all. It's just, why they have to do Leslie Tompkins like that? I don't understand. All I'm saying is it was a long and horrible way to tell Batman that he should not have kids in his line of duty. You couldn't just sit down with them and have a talk. You had to let one of like the kids die. I don't know. Anyway, I think a good way to round out these stories, since I started with Frank Miller, we might as well just end with Frank Miller. And that is, of course, The Dark Knight Strikes Again, which is the sequel to Batman The Dark Knight Returns. Now, you would think the sequel to one of the most groundbreaking Batman arcs of all time would be great. It'd be fine. It's by the same creative team. It just wasn't. This 2001 to 2002 limited series that focuses on Bruce coming out of his hiding after he emerges back into Gotham 3 years after it was said that he was dead, of course, after everything that happened with Superman and faking his own death and all that at the end of The Dark Knight Returns. But he comes back because Lex Luthor is crazy and is being like a dictator and is taking over the United States, wants to take over the world, that whole thing. But he's training his followers within all of this to help him combat Lex Luthor. Now, this felt like when a movie, when a series, whatever, is very, very popular and you want to keep riding on that popularity, because that's how good The Dark Knight Returns was, because even though that was 1986, in the early 2000s, that was still regarded as one of the best Batman stories in the character's canon, even after almost 2 decades, and they were like, oh, Frank Miller, oh, DKR, let's continue this. I understand the appeal, because of course everyone's like, oh, it has still Klaus Janson and Lynn Burley, like the same creative team, it should be fantastic. And you learn that the sequel was just unnecessary, not crafted that well, probably rushed, and just didn't have the same feel as I suppose The Dark Knight Returns. Should you read it if you're a fan of Frank Miller or Klaus Janson Lemaire's artwork and all that? Of course. Of course read it. But is it good? It's not the best. My biggest problem with DKR Strikes Again was the fact that they made Carrie Kelly Catgirl. That was my grievance with it, honestly. That was the reason why I was like, ooh, I don't really like that. I liked her as Robin. I had no problem with that. But I suppose she got older and was like, I don't want to be Robin. I want to be this more mature persona of Catgirl. It just wasn't the greatest thing you could ever do. But like I said in the beginning, this story and all the other stories that we have highlighted, there are probably more Batman stories that many fans want to pretend like that wasn't a thing. That's not part of his mythology. Let's just act like that just was not created and that wasn't knowingly put out by the company. But does that mean that it isn't a part of Batman's 80-year history? Of course it doesn't. So should you check it out? Yes. Not everything can be a Batman Dark Knight Returns. Not everything can be whatever your favorite Batman story of all time is, which I can guess it's probably not one of these like 8 that I discussed. But you should still check it out because it is part of Batman's history, whether you like it or not. Thank you guys so much for watching this video about Batman comics that fans pretend never happened, but I think you should definitely experience for yourself. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a bat thumbs up. As always, all of my social media is linked in the description below, including Instagram at History of the Batman, so why don't you give it a follow and become a Gothamite? Check out the rest of my Batman videos on this channel, including my last 2, which are discussing Harley Quinn and Catwoman as part of my 5-minute Bat History Gotham City Siren series. The next video will be about Poison Ivy, and rounding that out will be a video about the Gotham City Sirens publication itself. Check out those, and of course, please subscribe to this channel so you can get more of this Batman community. It would mean so much to me. And also tell me what is a Batman story in comics that you feel like is really bad. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will have more History of the Batman soon right here on YouTube. Remember, Gothamites, about peace, love, and Batman. Bye.